You might think the Industrial Revolution was all about grand inventions and booming progress, lighting up the world like a fireworks show. Factories churning out wonders, families thriving in the glow of opportunity. But hold on. Hit that like button if you're ready to peel back the shiny myth, subscribe for more raw dives into history's underbelly, and drop a comment on what surprises you most. The truth? For the kids caught in it, that progress was a grinding nightmare, a machine that devoured the young. Dim lanterns flickering like dying stars, the air thick with coal smoke and desperation, a low rumble building like thunder in your chest. Now, imagine opening your eyes to it all, your small body jolting awake in the pre-dawn chill. You wake up in a cramped room that smells of damp wool and unwashed clothes, the kind that clings to your skin like a second layer of grime. Your ma's hand shakes your shoulder, rough from years at the loom, her face etched with lines that scream silent worry. No time for breakfast. Just a crust of bread shoved into your palm as she bundles you into threadbare rags. The street outside is a blur of shadows, cobblestones slick under your bare feet, nipping cold that bites up your legs like tiny teeth. Other kids shuffle alongside, eyes down, breaths puffing in the foggy morning air. You're 8, maybe 9, small enough to squeeze where machines demand it, but your heart hammers like it's trying to escape. The mill looms ahead, a hulking beast of brick and iron, windows glowing faint orange from the lamps inside. You push through the massive doors, and the world explodes into chaos. The air stings your eyes and throat, sharp with lint that floats like snow from hell, coating your tongue with a bitter dust you can't spit out. Coughs erupt around you, harsh, wet hacks from the older workers bent over their stations. The roaring looms drown everything, a thunderous clatter of shuttles slamming, belts whipping, gears grinding like the jaws of some iron monster devouring the day. It vibrates through your bones, shaking your teeth, making your ears ring, even before you step fully in. The overseer points you to a row of spinning frames, his thick finger jabbing like an accusation. You climb onto the wooden platform, knees wobbling on the slick boards, and reach for the threads whipping past, endless white snakes twisting into yarn. Your fingers, small and nimble, fumble at first, snagging the brakes, but you learn quick, because a missed snag means the strap later. Sweat beads on your forehead despite the chill, mixing with the lint to form a gritty paste. Around you, the crowd of workers sways in rhythm, mothers with babies strapped to their backs, boys like you darting under machines to tie off snaps, their faces pale smudges in the haze. A girl nearby stumbles, her hand caught briefly in the whir, and she yanks back with a wince, rubbing red skin, eyes wide with that quiet terror you all share. Hours blur as the roar swallows time, your arms aching from the stretch, back burning from the hunch. The air grows heavier, laced with oil and the faint metallic tang of blood from some unseen slip. You pause once, just a breath, to wipe your face and catch a glimpse through a grimy window, the sun climbing slow, mocking the endless night inside. In that moment, you feel the weight of it all, how a child's hands fuel an empire, bending time itself into cloth. But deep down, a spark flickers. Will it break you, or forge something unbreakable? Your hands ache already, blistered skin cracking like dry earth under the constant tug of the threads. The mill's roar fades into a dull pulse in your ears, not the shocking blast of your first hour, but a steady drumbeat that matches your heartbeat now, hour after hour. You stand there, tiny frame wedged between the massive spinning jennies, fingers dancing over the bobbins that whirl faster than you can think. Each twist pulls at your palms, the rough wool scraping deeper, drawing thin lines of blood that you wipe on your apron without breaking stride. The air hangs heavy with the scent of heated metal and lanolin, oily and cloying, sticking to your face like a mask you can't remove. You reach, pull, tie. Over and over, the motion etching itself into your muscles until your arms feel like lead weights swinging on strings. A loose end snaps free, and you lunge for it, knees scraping the filthy floor littered with discarded fibers. Around you, the other children move in syncopated shadows, their movements jerky from exhaustion. A boy younger than you, maybe 6, sways on his stool nearby, eyelids drooping as he nods off, only to jerk awake when his thread tangles. He rubs his eyes with the back of his hand, leaving streaks of grime, his small shoulders hunching further into himself. You want to nudge him, share a glance of solidarity, but there's no time. The overseer paces the aisles, his boots thudding like warnings, whip coiled at his belt. The day stretches into a haze, breaks rare and fleeting, a quick gulp of stale water from a shared bucket, tasting of rust and spit. Outside, through the high windows, you catch slivers of daylight shifting from gray to gold, then dimming again, while inside, gas lamps hiss eternally, casting long shadows that twist like the yarns you're forced to mend. Your mind wanders to fragments of what used to be, skipping stones by the canal after school, the laugh of siblings in the yard, the simple joy of a full belly and empty hands. But those memories blur now, overwritten by the click-clack of machinery, the burn in your joints, the way your body shrinks smaller each shift to fit the spaces adults can't reach. As the whistle finally blows, signaling the end, or is it just another false dawn? You flex your fingers, watching them tremble, raw and unfamiliar, like they've forgotten how to play. In the quiet that follows, you realize childhood isn't stolen in a rush. It's unraveled thread by thread, leaving you pieced together from duty and ache, wondering if innocence ever truly belonged to you. The damp chill seeps through your thin shirt first, a clammy grip from the stone walls that line the shaft entrance. You stand at the mouth of the mine, 10 years old and small for it, clutching a scrap of cloth lantern that flickers weakly against the gathering dusk. The air tastes of wet earth and sulfur, sharp on your tongue like biting into coal itself. Miners shuffle past, their faces black in smears under helmets, shoulders brushing yours in the crowded queue. One older lad, no more than 12, pats your back awkwardly, his eyes hollow with the knowing look of someone who's already lost pieces of themselves down there. You step into the iron cage with a group of them, the metal floor slick under your boots, groaning as the winding gear engages above. It jerks downward, chains rattling like bones in the dark, and the world above shrinks to a shrinking circle of gray sky. Wind rushes up, cold and fetid, whipping your hair as you plummet into the black. Your stomach twists, hands gripping the bars so tight your knuckles whiten. Heart pounding, you peer through the gaps, walls blurring into seamless rock, the air growing thicker, pressing in like a living thing. The cage shudders to a halt, deep underground where light dies. An elder miner unhooks the gate, his lantern swinging to reveal a tunnel barely wide enough for one body at a time. You duck low, following the line of shadows, your head scraping the jagged ceiling that flakes coal dust onto your neck. The ground slopes sharper now, forcing you to bend at the waist, knees churning through puddles that soak your trousers to the skin. Echoes bounce, distant picks chipping, carts rumbling, breaths heaving in the tight space, sweat beads despite the cold, mixing with the grime to cake your face. You reach your spot, a narrow vein where kids like you crawl on all fours, hands and knees raw against the sharp floor. The darkness is absolute, save for the faint glow of your lantern bobbing as you wedge it into a crevice. You pick at the seam, nails prying loose chunks that clatter into your sack, each breath shallow in the low tunnel that squeezes your ribs. Nearby, another boy grunts, his small form twisting to avoid a cave-in scar, sweat dripping from his brow as he hauls a fragment free. The weight of the earth bears down, unyielding, turning minutes into hours, your world reduced to this burrow of labor and shadow. As the shift wears on, you pause to catch your breath, feeling the pulse of the mine around you, the subtle shifts in the rock, the distant groans. It's like the ground holds you in a secret vigil, demanding your youth for its fuel, and in that crush, You wonder if the surface remembers boys like you at all, or if you're just echoes fading into the stone. The pick strikes the coalface with a sharp crack that reverberates through your arms, sending jolts up to your shoulders like lightning in your bones. You're crammed in this low-seam, body-contorted, sweat-slick skin chafing against the rough timbers propping the roof. Dust hangs in the lamplight, fine black particles that you breathe in with every swing, coating your throat raw and tasting like ash on your lips. Your cough starts small, a tickle building to a deep, rattling hack that shakes your frame, echoing off the walls alongside the others in the stope. You swing again, muscles burning from the endless repetition, the tool heavier with each arc as fatigue settles in your limbs. Chips fly, nicking your hands, drawing beads of blood that mix with the grime and smear across the handle. The air grows thicker down here, stale and warm from the press of bodies, laced with the acrid bite of methane that makes your eyes water. You pause to wipe your brow, but the cloth comes away filthy, and a fit of coughing doubles you over, chest heaving as if something inside is tearing loose. Nearby, an older miner slumps against the wall, his face twisted in a grimace, one hand clutching his side while he forces another labored breath, his cough a wet, ominous rumble that blends with the drip of water from unseen cracks. The shift drags on, your world narrowing to the swing, the strike, the gather, scooping fragments into the corve with numb fingers that fumble in the dim. Legs cramp from the squat, back screaming from the hunch, but you push through, driven by the faint clatter of carts rumbling past in the main tunnel, signals of the rhythm that won't stop. A younger trapper boy darts by on his hands and knees, opening a door to let air flow, his small form pausing to cough into his sleeve, eyes red-rimmed as he shoots you a quick, weary nod before vanishing into the gloom. Tension builds with every breath, the dust settling deeper, turning your lungs to fire, while the mind's subtle groans remind you of the fragile balance above. You lean back finally, pick resting across your knees, the echo of your last strike fading into silence broken only by collective coughs. In that hush you feel the dust embedded in you now, a part of your very breath, and it strikes you how the body's resilience frays not in bursts, but in these quiet invasions, testing how much of yourself you can surrender before the core gives way. The air hits you like a wall when you push open the door to the tenement room, a thick, sour wave of unwashed bodies and chamber pots that curls into your nostrils and clings there. It's nightfall outside, but inside, the space feels alive with heat from too many breaths in too small a place, maybe 20 souls packed into walls that weep with damp. You step over a tangle of legs on the floor, your boot squelching in a puddle you hope is just spilled water, the chill of it soaking through instantly. The smell deepens as you move, sweat mingled with the faint rot of sickness, like onions gone bad under the floorboards. You squeeze onto the straw pallet you share with your siblings, the mattress sagging under the weight, springs poking through like accusations. Bodies press close. Your sister's elbow digs into your side, her feverish skin hot against your arm, while your brother's ragged cough punctuates the low murmurs filling the room. Gas lamps hiss from nails in the beams, casting jittery shadows that dance over faces etched with exhaustion. A neighbor across the way shifts in her bunk, pulling a threadbare blanket higher, her eyes meeting yours for a beat, resigned, wordless, before she turns away, cradling a wheezing infant to her chest. The walls seem to breathe with the crowd, paper peeling in strips from the moisture, revealing plaster scarred by leaks. You lie there, back against the rough lath, feeling the vibrations of footsteps from the family above, dust sifting down like fine rain onto your hair. Flies buzz lazily through the open window, drawn to the slop bucket in the corner, their wings a constant drone that blends with the symphony of snores, whimpers, and the occasional retch. Your own stomach twists, not from hunger alone, but from the closeness that turns every illness into a shared plague, fevers jumping from bed to bed, coughs echoing like warnings. As the night deepens, you shift for air, but there's none to be found. Even the draft carries the collective reek. Hands brush in the dark, accidental touches that speak of boundaries long erased, and you pull your knees up, trying to carve out a sliver of space. In this press of flesh and filth, you sense the quiet desperation weaving through everyone, a thread binding you all in survival's grim weave. And it dawns on you how humanity's spark endures not despite the crush, but somehow within it, flickering against the overwhelming tide of shared want. The cold seeps from the walls first, a constant trickle of moisture that wets your sleeve as you lean against the plaster in the dim corner of the room. It's barely 10 feet square, this single space your family calls home, where the air hangs heavy with the day's residue. Smoke from the stove, the faint tang of boiled cabbage. You shift on the shared bed, a sagging frame crammed with mattresses layered one atop the other, your legs tangled with your father's heavy limbs, his snores rumbling through the thin barriers of blanket and bone. Every movement echoes, the springs creaking like old doors in protest, jostling your mother awake beside you, her hand instinctively reaching to steady the youngest on the edge. You sit up slowly, careful not to disturb the pile, your elbow brushing your sister's ribs, her body curled tight in sleep, face pale in the flicker of a single candle. The walls press in, paper bubbling where water stains bloom like dark flowers, dripping steadily into a bucket that overflows with last night's catch. You reach out to touch one, fingers coming away slick and chilled, the dampness invading your nails as if the building itself weeps for the lives squeezed within. Footsteps from the hall thump through the thin partition, vibrating the floorboards under your bare feet, reminding you how sounds travel unbidden, privacy a forgotten dream. Morning light filters weakly through the grimy pane, but the room stays shadowed, crowded by the iron bedstead, a rickety table piled with mending, and crates serving as chairs. Your brother stirs across from you, rubbing his eyes with fists caked in yesterday's soot, his knee knocking yours as he swings his legs down, space so tight that evasion means standing on tiptoe. Mother rises next, her joints popping softly, smoothing her skirt with quick, weary strokes before tending the stove, the heat from the tiny fire doing little to chase the chill that clings to everything. Father lingers in bed, his hand gesturing vaguely for another moment's rest, eyes meeting yours with a flicker of apology amid the fatigue. You fold the shared blanket, folding away the night's warmth too soon, feeling the walls close tighter with each breath, the family's rhythms overlapping in this confined pulse. In the squeeze of it all, you grasp how bodies adapt, molding to the limits like clay to a mold, and wonder if the mind follows suit, enduring the enclosure until freedom feels like a myth, or if it quietly rebels, carving invisible rooms within the heart. Your stomach clenches like a fist around nothing, a hollow ache that starts as a whisper at dawn and builds to a roar by midday. You're out on the cobbled street, the chill wind off the Thames nipping at your exposed ankles, carrying the distant tease of fresh bread from a bakery too far for your coins. You clutch the hem of your coat, pockets empty save for lint and a few coppers scavenged from the gutter, and shuffle toward the market square, where sellers hawk their wares under sagging awnings. The ground feels uneven under your worn soles, each step pulling at the weakness in your legs, a reminder of skipped suppers stretching back days. You weave through the throng, women with baskets balanced on hips, men in caps, eyeing stalls with furrowed brows, your gaze darting to the ground for any overlooked peel or crust. A vendor tosses a bruised potato your way after you linger near his cart, his face softening just a fraction as you catch it mid-air, the thump against your palm. A small victory that tastes of dirt when you brush it off. You bite in raw, the starchy bitterness exploding on your tongue, juice dribbling down your chin as you chew fast, hiding the act behind your hand. Nearby, a cluster of kids like you huddles by a wall, one poking at a discarded bone with a stick, their eyes lighting with shared hunger when you flash the potato shard, though no one moves to claim it. The square buzzes with barters, the sizzle of fat in a pan from a pie stall twisting your gut tighter, steam rising like a cruel promise. You sidle closer, pretending to adjust your boot, inhaling the savory warmth that makes your mouth water involuntarily. A sharp glance from the pie man sends you retreating, but not before you snag a fallen crumb from the dirt, popping it in like contraband. Back home, you divide the remnants with siblings around the scarred table, mother's fingers trembling as she portions the potato into thin slices, her look one of quiet calculation amid the fading light filtering through cracked panes. Afternoon wears into evening, the gnaw unrelenting, sharpening your senses to every scent on the breeze, every shadow that might hide edible scraps. You forage the alleys, hands probing bins behind taverns, emerging with a rind of cheese gone green at the edges, its sour tang a feast you savor slowly. In the grip of this endless hunt, you come to see hunger not as foe, but as teacher, honing the body to survive on whispers of nourishment, the mind to schemes and silences, revealing how fragility forges the unyielding will to claim the next bite. The loaf crumbles under your fingers like chalk, a dry rasp that echoes in the quiet kitchen as you tear off a chunk for supper. It's the cheap bake from the corner shop, pale and speckled with grit that catches between your teeth. Bits of bone meal or plaster, they say, stretched thin to feed the masses. You chew slowly, the doughy mass sticking to your palate, releasing a faint, chalky bitterness that coats your mouth like regret. Outside, the evening fog rolls in, muffling the clatter of carts, but inside the single lamp sputters, throwing shadows over the scarred table where your family gathers. You dip a piece into the tin cup of water drawn from the communal pump, hoping to soften it, but the liquid pulls back oily and sharp, tasting of iron and something fouler, sewage leaching from cracked pipes beneath the street. It slides down your throat with a burn that twists your gut, leaving an aftertaste of rust and decay, like swallowing the city's underbelly. Your sister wrinkles her nose after a sip, pushing the cup away with a small shiver, her hand trembling as she breaks her own morsel, eyes downcast in silent protest. Father takes a larger bite, his jaw working methodically, a faint grimace crossing his face before he masks it with a swallow, reaching to pat your shoulder, rough reassurance amid the meager meal. The bread sits heavy in your stomach, not filling but bloating, a false comfort that ferments into nausea as the night deepens. You lean over the basin later, retching up the undigested lump, the sour reek mingling with the room's perpetual damp. Mother dabs your forehead with a rag, her touch cool and steady, while your brother hovers nearby, clutching his portion uneaten, his thin frame shaking from the chill that no fire can chase. Every bite, every draught becomes a gamble. Will it nourish or poison, sustain or sicken, in this daily ritual of want, where even the basics betray you? You rinse your mouth with the last dregs, the bitterness lingering like a stain, and settle onto the palate, body protesting the intrusion. In the hush that follows, you ponder how poverty doesn't just empty the belly, it poisons the source, turning sustenance into a subtle torment, etching survival's cost into every flavor, every swallow, until the soul learns to hunger for more than mere escape from the pall. The chill grips you like icy fingers wrapping around your spine, starting in your core, and spreading outward as you huddle against the alley wall. It's midday, but the narrow passage between tenements traps the shadows, the air thick with the metallic tang of recent rain mixed with the ever-present rot from overflowing gutters. Your skin prickles with sweat that cools too quickly, leaving you shivering, despite the press of bodies shuffling past, workers returning from shifts, their faces gaunt and averted. A sudden cramp twists your gut, forcing you to double over, hands clutching at the rough brick that scrapes your palms raw. You slide down, knees hitting the slick cobblestones, the cold seeping through your trousers like a promise of worse to come. Whispers ripple through the crowd. A woman pauses, her hand fluttering to her mouth as she eyes the puddle forming near your feet, thin and colorless, soaking into the filth. She backs away, crossing herself with a quick jerk, her skirts brushing others who give you wide berth, fear etching their features into masks of dread. Your brother kneels beside you, his small hand on your shoulder trembling, brows knit in confusion as he wipes your forehead with his sleeve, the cloth coming away damp and clammy. The world tilts, fever blooming hot behind your eyes, turning the alley's clamor into a muffled roar. Distant shouts, the drip of water from eaves, your own breaths coming shallow and ragged. You try to stand, legs buckling like wet rope, and a man in a threadbare cap hesitates before tossing a rag your way, his gaze sliding off you as if touching it might taint him. The stench rises sharper now, bile surging in your throat, and you retch into the gutter, the acrid burn tearing at your insides, leaving you gasping. Faces peer from doorways, curious then horrified, before shutters slam shut, sealing the fear inside. Hours blur as neighbors scatter, the alley emptying around your solitary vigil, the chill deepening into bone ache while heat pulses in waves. In this grip of unseen terror, you feel the body's betrayal most acutely. How swiftly health unravels in the city's crush, stripping away illusions of control and leaving only the raw pulse of survival, questioning if resilience lies in fighting the inevitable or simply holding on through the night's uncertain mercy. The thud of hammers on pine echoes through the narrow street like a dirge, each nail driven home sealing another small life away. You stand at the edge of the crowd in the dim autumn light, the wood's fresh sap scent clashing with the sharp chemical bite of lime scattered over the graves to hasten decay. Your hands fidget with the frayed edge of your shawl, the chill wind cutting through as if the cold itself mourns, while carts rumble past laden with rough boxes, child-sized, hastily assembled in the carpenter's yard where sawdust clings to everything like fallen snow. You follow the procession slowly, feet dragging on the muddied path, the weight of collective grief pressing down heavier than the fog. Women clutch handkerchiefs to their faces, shoulders shaking in silent sobs, while men stare at the ground, caps twisted in white-knuckled grips, their steps faltering as the coffin-bearers pause at a fresh-dug pit. One widow collapses to her knees beside an empty doorway, her fingers tracing the air where her child's laughter once filled the threshold, now hollow and echoing with absence. You edge closer to your own home, heart sinking at the sight, doors ajar, interior stripped of warmth, a forgotten toy abandoned on the stoop like a ghost's memento. The bell tolls from the distant church, a low, mournful peal that vibrates through your chest, marking another burial as the undertaker's men lower the box with ropes creaking under the strain. Neighbors gather in clusters, hands reaching out to steady one another, a pat on the back, a shared lean, but their eyes hold the same hollow helplessness, darting away from the pits as if averting the gaze might spare them next. You press a palm to your neighbor's door, feeling the silence within, the air inside stagnant and untouched, a void where routines once pulsed with life. As the last procession fades into the haze, leaving streets quieter than before, you linger in the emptying square, the hammers, rhythm slowing to sporadic taps. In this wave of loss, you confront how death doesn't arrive alone. It empties the living too, carving silences into the bones of community, forcing the mind to wrestle with fragility, how one unseen scourge can unravel threads of hope, leaving only the stark measure of endurance against the encroaching void. The acrid bite of soot fills your nostrils as you crouch at the hearth, the black powder already caking your bare knees and palms from the preliminary sweeps. You're 7, thin as a reed, chosen for this because your small frame slips where men falter, and the master sweep nudges you forward with a gruff boot to your back, his face a mask of grime under the brim of his hat. The fireplace looms dark and narrow, bricks rough and uneven, exhaling a faint, stale warmth laced with old ash that tickles your throat into dry coughs. You twist your body sideways, shoulders scraping the constricting walls as you inch upward, knees driving against the unyielding stone that tears at your skin with each push. The space tightens like a vice around your chest, ribs compressing until breath comes in shallow sips, the darkness swallowing light from below until you're blind, feeling your way by the graze of mortar and the sting of fresh scrapes drawing blood that mixes warm with the soot. Your eyes burn fiercely now, tears streaming to clear the grit but only smearing it deeper, turning vision into a blur of shadows when faint glows appear from higher flues. Higher still, the chimney bends slightly, forcing you to contort elbow-wedged, hip-grinding against a jutting ledge, while the heat builds from lingering embers far below, baking your back in waves that make sweat pour, only to cake into muddy trails down your legs. You pause, wedged tight, heart thumping against the confines, listening to the distant scrape of your tools below and the master's impatient taps on the wall, vibrating up like summons. A loose brick shifts under your hand, crumbling soot in a cascade that chokes you further, and you claw onward, nails breaking on the rough surface, the confinement pressing memories of open sky into irrelevance. You emerge finally at the roof's edge, gasping into the gray dawn air, body trembling as you shake free clumps of filth, knees raw and throbbing, lungs heaving with the relief of space. In that emergence from the black maw, you feel the smallness of your form not as curse, but as the price of passage, how the body yields to the task, enduring the burn and bind until the mind hardens around the ache, learning that some darknesses demand you become the light that cleanses them. The first hint of open air rushes in as you breach the flue's top, a cool gust carrying the faint, clean scent of rain-washed rooftops that cuts through the soot clogging your lungs. You're perched on the edge now, legs dangling over the clay tiles slick with morning dew, your scraped knees throbbing as you blink against the sudden flood of pale light. The sky stretches above, a vast, smudged blue framed by chimneys belching smoke like weary dragons, and for a breath you lean out, arms spread wide, feeling the wind tug at your ragged shirt as if inviting you to leap into that endless expanse. Birds wheel distant, their cries sharp and free, echoing the wild beat of your heart in this stolen moment above the crush below. You gaze longer, tracing the curve of the horizon where factories blur into haze, the river glinting silver under the sun, a world unbound, whispering of games and fields you only dream of after dark. Your fingers curl around the brick lip, rough and warming under your palms, the city sprawled like a map of possibilities, carriages tiny as toys, spires piercing the clouds. A fellow climber, another lad no older than you, pokes his head from a neighboring stack, his sooty face breaking into a rare, fleeting grin as he points upward, mimicking flight with flapping elbows before the master below shouts, his voice a muffled bark rising through the shaft. The spell shatters like brittle glass. You twist back, shoulders hunching as the pull of duty yanks you downward. The opening shrinks behind you, sky winking out into black confinement once more, your body sliding feet first into the tight burn of the walls that scrape your elbows and chest anew. Descent drags slower than the climb, each twist coiling tension in your gut, the freedom's echo fading with the increasing dark, replaced by the familiar rasp of breath and the sting resuming its claim. Below, the master's lantern bobs impatiently, his shadow looming as you tumble out, coughing up the last clean lungful. In that brief unveiling, you taste liberty's edge, sharp, elusive, only to feel it slip away, reminding how the climb devours not just the body, but the soul's quiet yearnings, binding resistance to the rhythm of return until hope hardens into mere endurance. A spark banked against the next ascent's demand. The ladle scrapes against the iron pot with a hollow clang, scooping up a thin, grayish gruel that plops into your battered tin bowl, the steam carrying a faint, starchy odor, mixed with the tang of charity's undercurrent, stale and institutional, like boiled rags. You're at the end of the queue, snaking outside the workhouse gates, the winter chill numbing your fingertips as you clutch the bowl, the metal cold enough to sting through the cracks in your gloves. Feet shuffle in the muddied lane, boots scraping gravel, breaths fogging the air in ragged clouds from those ahead. Families huddled close, faces drawn tight with the weight of asking. You step forward when your turn comes, holding out the bowl with hands that tremble not just from cold, but from the prick of shame burning in your chest. The server, a stout woman in a starched apron, dips without meeting your eyes, her lips pursing slightly as she hands it back, her free hand gesturing you, along with a brisk wave that feels like dismissal. You retreat to the wall, sinking onto a low bench slick with frost, the wood biting into your thighs through threadbare trousers. The gruel cools fast, a watery sludge that you stir with a wooden spoon worn smooth by countless mouths, each swirl revealing lumps of unground oats that catch like insults on your tongue. You bring it to your lips, the first swallow sliding down lukewarm and flavorless, filling your belly with emptiness disguised as sustenance, thin enough to slake thirst more than hunger, leaving a gritty residue that you work at with your teeth. Around you, others eat in silence. A man nearby spoons his ration methodically, his shoulders slumped, glancing sidelong at you with a nod that's half solidarity, half shared defeat. A child tugs at her mother's skirt, only to be pulled closer, the woman's arm tightening in protective hush. The line keeps moving, new faces emerging from the fog, each one bearing the same quiet surrender, the air thick with the unspoken toll of dependence. Swallowing the last dregs, you scrape the bowl clean, the metallic aftertaste lingering like a stain on your pride. In this ritual of relief, you sense dignity's quiet erosion. Not in the giving, but in the receiving. How the body's need bends the spirit low, teaching that survival sometimes demands you trade self for a scrap, weighing the soul against the hollow of an empty gut. The echo of boots on flagstone halls greets you first, a cold, resonant clack that bounces off high ceilings as you clutch your mother's hand one last time. The workhouse air bites with a sterile chill, laced with the faint, sour reek of disinfected lime and unyielding stone, seeping through your thin smock like an unwelcome breath. Overseers in stiff uniforms herd the group forward, their lanterns casting long, wavering shadows that make the corridor seem endless, your small fingers slipping from hers as the line divides, men to one wing, women and children to another, the separation swift and mechanical. You turn back, eyes stinging with tears. You blink away, catching her face pale and drawn under the gaslight, her lips pressing thin as she mouths a silent plea, her arm extending briefly before an attendant blocks the path with a firm hand. Your brother, just a step behind, stumbles when pulled aside, his free hand reaching for yours, fingers brushing in a desperate graze that ends too soon, his eyes wide with the shock of it all. The doors swing shut with a heavy thud, muffling the cries from the other side, leaving you in a ward of iron beds aligned like soldiers, the chill deepening as night falls, blankets thin and stiff against your skin. You curl on the lumpy mattress, the coarse wool scratching your cheek, listening to the soft whimpers of other children in the dim rows, small forms shifting restlessly, a girl nearby hugging her knees, her shoulders quaking in quiet sobs that mirror your own. An older inmate shuffles past on her rounds, pausing to tuck a corner of blanket higher on your frame, with rough, calloused fingers, her gaze holding a flicker of shared sorrow before she moves on. The walls seem to close in with the silence, broken only by the drip of a distant faucet and the occasional creak of the building settling, each sound amplifying the void where family voices should fill the space. Morning brings the routine's grind, but the ache lingers like a bruise under your ribs, the tear tracks dried on your face a private map of loss. In this enforced parting, you feel the family's invisible threads snap one by one, the body's warmth no match for institutional frost, and it settles in your mind how separation doesn't just divide spaces, it fractures the self, planting seeds of quiet resilience amid the pain, where love persists not in proximity, but in the enduring pull of memory against the cold divide. The whistle pierces the air first, a shrill wail that slices through the murmur of the gathered crowd like a knife through fog, setting your teeth on edge and raising gooseflesh along your arms despite the midday sun. You're perched on a low hill overlooking the tracks, the ground rough with scrub grass that pricks through your stockings, a mix of villagers and workers pressed close in uneasy excitement, their bodies a warm barrier against the breeze, carrying faint coal smoke from distant factories. Your heart quickens as the distant rumble builds, vibrating up from the earth into your souls, a deep growl that swells like an approaching storm. You shield your eyes against the glare, spotting the iron beast emerging from the haze, a hulking form of black metal and billowing steam, pistons churning with relentless fury, wheels flashing in hypnotic rhythm over the rails. The speed unnerves you. It hurtles forward faster than any horse, devouring distance in greedy lunges, the scream of its whistle doubling as it nears, blasting hot gusts that whip your hair and sting your cheeks with flecks of grit. Folks around shift restlessly. A woman clutches her child's hand tighter, pulling him back a step, her face paling. An old man leans on his stick, mouth agape in awe, while a young lad beside you bounces on his toes, fists clenched in thrill that borders on fear. The locomotive thunders past, close enough that the rush of air buffets you, carrying the oily tang of machinery and the acrid bite of burning coal that coats your tongue like ash. Carriages rattle behind, windows blurring by, faces inside mirror smears, and the ground trembles with its passage, knocking pebbles loose underfoot. You stumble back, pulse racing, as the tail end fades with a final hiss of steam, leaving silence broken only by scattered coughs and the echo fading into the fields. The crowd exhales collectively, some murmuring, hands wiping soot-streaked brows, eyes lingering on the smoke trail snaking skyward. In the aftermath, you feel the raw pulse of this new age, not just in the machine's roar, but in the body's instinctive recoil, how progress barrels forth unchecked, compressing time into terrifying velocity, forcing the mind to confront its own smallness against the iron tide reshaping the world. The heat rolls off the boiler like a living wave, slamming into your face as you shovel coal into the firebox, the shovel's handle slick with sweat that drips from your brow and stings your eyes. You're on the maintenance crew, crouched low on the rutted embankment beside the tracks, the sun beating down mercilessly while the engine idles with a low, ominous hiss, steam venting in scalding puffs that blister your arms where sleeves roll up. The air chokes with thick smoke, acrid and oily, coating your throat with each labored breath, tasting of charred wood and molten iron that makes you gag mid-motion. You thrust the shovel deeper, muscle straining against the unyielding black chunks, back aching from the hunch as the locomotive shudders alive, wheels grinding forward in a test run that vibrates the ground beneath your boots. Sparks fly from the undercarriage, singeing the hem of your trousers, and you scramble back just as a coupling snaps loose nearby, metal screeching in a shower of fragments that pepper the air like shrapnel. A fellow worker lunges to grab the loose chain, his face twisted in grit-streaked focus, hands blistering on the hot links as he hauls it taut. Another man pressing a rag to his own scorched palm, teeth gritted against the pain that reddens his skin. The engine lurches ahead, faster now, heat intensifying to a furnace roar that warps the air, forcing you to shield your face with a forearm, while dodging a spray of boiling water from a ruptured pipe. It hisses past, sizzling on the dry earth inches from your feet. Carts loaded with rails clatter by, pulled by straining horses that kick up dust clouds blending with the smoke, and you steady a falling beam with your shoulder, the wood's rough bite digging in as your team swarms to secure it, bodies colliding in frantic rhythm, sweat-soaked shirts clinging like second skins. A shout rises from the foreman up the line, his arm waving urgently as brakes squeal, the whole beast grinding to halt with a final belch of fumes that leave you coughing, vision blurring in the haze. You slump against a rail, chest heaving, the dangers etched fresh into your limbs, the burns, the near misses that claim limbs or lives without warning. In this forge of motion, you grasp progress's hidden toll, how the iron heart propels nations forward, while devouring the hands that feed it, testing the body's limits not in slow decay, but in fleeting, fiery trials that demand you rise again, scarred but unbowed, to stoke the relentless advance. The blast of heat envelops you as you approach the furnace mouth, a searing wall that dries your lips and draws sweat in rivers down your back, even through the heavy leather apron tied tight around your slight frame. You're 9, tasked with the runner's job in the foundry's roar, the air shimmering with waves of intensity that make the iron gates far off waver like mirages. The glow from the molten bath blinds in pulses, white-orange fire that sears your vision when you glance too long, leaving spots dancing like embers in the dark corners of your sight, while the metallic tang of superheated slag bites at your tongue with every inhale. You grip the ladle handle with both hands, the wood charred and rough under your palms, as the foreman signals with a sharp nod, his face shadowed and glistening under the brim of his cap. The metal groans deep from the furnace, a low bellow that vibrates through your boots on the pitted concrete floor, building to the hiss as the pour begins. You shuffle forward in step with the team, muscles straining to guide the flow into the sand mold, the liquid iron cascading in a brilliant arc that spits sparks toward your legs, close enough to singe the hairs and raise red welts on exposed skin. The light intensifies, turning night into false day, illuminating the sweat-slicked brows of workers nearby, one wiping his forehead with a forearm before cranking the bellows harder, his arms bulging with effort, eyes squinting against the glare. Tension coils as a bubble in the stream threatens to burst, forcing you to lean in closer, the heat now a physical push against your chest, baking your lungs until breaths come short and ragged. Another boy, your shadow on the line, darts to adjust the mold with tongs, his small body flinching from a rogue splatter that sizzles on the ground inches away, leaving a blackened scar. The pour steadies, the glow reflecting off puddles of sweat on the floor, the air thickening with the sharp scent of ozone and cooling metal until the last drop hisses into place, the furnace's fury dimming to a sullen red. You step back, apron steaming faintly, skin prickling with the memory of fire's kiss, eyes aching from the assault. In this crucible of creation, you feel the body's fierce dialogue with the elements. Heat that forges steel also tests flesh, demanding surrender to the blaze or risk consumption, where pain becomes the unspoken measure of progress, hardening resolve in the forge's unyielding glow. The hammer's weight settles in your grip first, heavy oak handles slick with sweat from the last swing, pulling at your shoulders as you raise it high above the glowing billet on the anvil. The forge hums with residual warmth, but it's the impact you brace for, the dull thud that jars up your arms like a thunderclap in bone, vibrating through your elbows and into your spine with each descent. You're 12, stationed as a striker in the smithy, the air thick with the sharp scent of quenching oil and hammered steel, a faint metallic tang that dusts your lips dry. You bring it down again, muscles coiling tight in your back and core, the red-hot metal yielding under the blow in a shower of sparks that dance across your boots before fizzling out. The rhythm builds, lift, swing, strike, each repetition grinding deeper into your joints, forearms burning from the torque, a steady ache blooming in your wrists like fire fed by friction. The smith across from you nods once, his brow furrowed in concentration as he shapes the edge with tongs, turning the piece for your next hit, his sweat-darkened shirt clinging as he gestures for harder force, eyes locked on the work with unyielding focus. Tension mounts as the billet thins, edges sharpening, but your arms falter mid-swing, the hammer clipping the anvil's rim and sending a jolt that numbs your fingers, forcing you to shake them out while the smith pauses, wiping his face with a rag before clapping your shoulder. Brief, encouraging, urging you on. Nearby, another apprentice hauls bellows, his thin legs pumping in sync, face flushed and veined from the strain, exchanging a quick glance with you that speaks of shared endurance, the pull of exhaustion in his slumped posture. The strikes echo louder now, blending with the clank of tools and the hiss of steam from cooling vats, your body a machine of its own, sweat tracing rivulets down your neck, pooling at your belt. You pause only to quench the blade in a trough, the sizzle rising like a sigh, steam enveloping you in a brief cool veil before the heat reclaims the space. The session drags, strikes slowing as fatigue settles heavy, turning power into persistence. In this forge of will, you sense the flesh's quiet rebellion against the task, muscles screaming for mercy, yet yielding to the hammer's demand, revealing how labor doesn't just shape metal. It molds the laborer, etching strength from ache until the body learns to bear the forge's mark, a testament to resilience carved in every weary swing. The reek assaults you as you descend the slippery bank, a foul cocktail of rotting sewage and chemical sludge that clings to your nostrils like a greasy film, making your eyes water and throat constrict. You're at the Thames, edge in the industrial sprawl, the water no longer a sparkling vein but a sluggish brown serpent choked with debris, discarded rags tangled with oily rags from the mills, flecks of dye swirling in iridescent scum. Your boots sink into the muddied shore, cold ooze sucking at your heels with each step, the chill seeping up your calves as if the river itself reaches to pull you under. You kneel to rinse the family's linens, dipping the coarse fabric into the flow, but it resists, heavy with floating refuse that brushes your knuckles. Chunks of waste bobbing like unwelcome company, a dead fish surfacing nearby, its scales dulled by the poison. The current gurgles low and labored, muffled by the load it carries, factory runoff foaming white at the edges, human leavings from upstream slums mingling with the runoff in a putrid brew that leaves a bitter, alkaline taste when splashes mist your lips. You scrub harder, wrists aching against the current's weak tug, water sloshing onto your skirt, soaking through to numb your skin. Nearby, a cluster of women works in silence, one stirring her pot with a stick that snaps against submerged trash, her face twisting in disgust as she fishes out a sodden boot. Another pauses, hand over her mouth, eyes scanning the horizon where barges chug by, belching more filth into the flow. A child darts past, skipping stones that barely ripple the surface, his splash sending a wave of stench your way, prompting you to turn aside, coughing into your sleeve. Tension builds with every dunk, the fabric emerging dirtier, the river's touch, a subtle invasion that promises itch or fever later, the contrast stark to tales of clearer waters from your grand's youth. You wring out the cloth finally, water dripping in tainted strings, and haul the bundle back up the bank, legs heavy with the mud's grip. In this poisoned stream, you feel nature's quiet surrender to progress's excess, how the body's interface with the world turns treacherous, mirroring the mind's slow corrosion, endurance honed not against effort alone, but against the insidious creep of decay that binds the poor to the very sources of their undoing. The parched scrape in your throat hits hardest as dawn breaks, a dry itch that pulls you from the thin blanket, driving you out to the communal pump at the alley's end. The morning air carries a faint, musty odor from the standpipe, iron-rusted and flaking, where a line already forms, shadowy figures rubbing sleep from eyes, buckets clanging softly against legs. You join the queue, the gravel under your bare feet cold and sharp, crunching with each shift as impatience builds, your tongue sticking to the roof of your mouth, craving even the promise of relief from this source you know too well. You step up when your turn comes, gripping the heavy handle that bites into your palm, pumping with both arms until the flow sputters out, water murky and tinged yellow, flecks of sediment swirling like dirt in the stream. It splashes into your pail, cold enough to shock your fingertips as you test a sip, the metallic tang hitting first, followed by an oily undercurrent that leaves a greasy film, tasting of pipe corrosion and whatever night soil leaches from the sewers upstream. You hesitate, swirling the bucket to settle the grime, but thirst wins. You cup your hands and drink deeper, the chill easing the burn temporarily, though revulsion twists your gut at the faint chemical bite that lingers. Around you, the line moves in weary rhythm. A mother ahead scoops for her toddler, who spits out a mouthful with a grimace, her hand rubbing his back before she forces a smaller sip. An old man behind you coughs into his sleeve after tasting, his eyes narrowing at the bucket as if weighing the risk against the need, shuffling closer with a resigned slump. Tension simmers in the shared glances, the unspoken fear of belly cramps or worse that stalks these draws, buckets sloshing as people hurry away, some straining the liquid through rags that do little to cleanse the hidden perils. You shoulder the pail home, water sloshing against your hip, the weight pulling at your frame as you ration a portion for the family, boiling what you can over a meager fire that barely cuts the taint. In this daily gamble, you feel the body's urgent betrayal, thirst-sharpening senses to the poison's whisper, forging a fragile pact with danger where survival hinges not on abundance, but on enduring the foul bargain, the mind steeling against the slow poison that tests how deeply need can drive the will. The clamor crashes over you like a wave as you weave into the market square, shouts of vendors hawking wilted veg and threadbare cloth rising in a ragged chorus that drowns your thoughts. The air hangs thick with a mingled reek of fish guts from the stalls, overlaid by the sharp tang of unwashed crowds and the greasy smoke from sizzling fat in iron pans. It clings to your skin, oily and insistent, as elbows jostle yours in the press. Your basket bumps against a hip, the wicker scraping rough as you squeeze through the throng, feet slipping on the cobbled muck slick with spilled brine and trodden peels, the chill damp soaking through your soles. You edge toward a fruit barrow piled with bruised apples, the trader's face ruddy and insistent as he thrusts one under your nose, his thick fingers gesturing at the meager quality, with a shake of his head that brooks no refusal. You fumble in your pocket for coppers, the metal cold and sticky in your palm, while behind you a woman's skirt brushes your leg in her hurry, her arm shooting out to snatch a loaf from a rival seller's grasp, eyes darting sharp in calculation. Bodies surge around. A child darts between knees, nearly upending your basket. An old man leans on a crutch, his free hand waving off a tout with a weary flick, sweat beading on his brow amid the crush. Tension coils in the haggling swirl. You counter the price with a pointed finger at the wormholes, the vendor's shoulders hunching in mock offense before he relents with a grunt, coins clinking into his tin as you tuck the apple away, its bruised skin yielding soft under your thumb. The noise peaks. A cartwheel grinds over a rut, rattling crates that teeter dangerously close. Pickpockets, shadows flicker in peripheral glances, hands hovering too near purses. You push onward, basket heavier now, the overload blurring faces into a sea of desperation and drive, scents shifting from stale bread to horse dung as the market sprawls wider under the hazy noon sky. You break free at the edge, lungs heaving in the relative quiet, skin prickled from the constant rub. In the market's frenzy, you sense the human tide's raw pulse, bodies bartering not just goods, but scraps of dignity, where B-load sharpens the survival edge, forging connections in the chaos until the mind tires of the fray, yearning for the calm that scarcity denies. The faint, sickly sweet rot curls up from the crate at your feet first, emanating from the overripe potatoes at the base of your stall, their skins splitting to release a mushy decay that battles the crisp, earthy tang of just-picked carrots bundled nearby. You're the vendor now, 16 and stooped under the sagging awning in the market's heart, fingers numb from the morning chill as you sort the mishmash, good stock to draw eyes, spoiled to hide in the shadows for pennies. The wooden cart creaks under the weight, wheels caked in yesterday's mud that flakes off onto your boots, the cold damp seeping through to chill your toes with each shift. You arrange the display with quick hands, propping a basket of apples forward, their waxy red skins promising wholeness despite the bruise underneath, while the rot's odor lingers, a constant undercurrent that makes your stomach turn, mingling with the fresher notes of herbs tied in bundles, their green sharpness a fleeting relief. Buyers weave in. A matron pauses, her nose wrinkling at the bad air before she pokes a turnip, fingers lingering as you lean in, gesturing low to undercut the price, your shoulders hunching to meet her wary gaze. She nods curtly, coins clinking into your palm, cold and insufficient, before vanishing into the flow, leaving you to discard a softened onion that squishes under your heel, the juice staining the boards. Tension simmers as the day wears. You haggle with a thin-faced lad, waving off his offer with a sharp headshake, sweat beading on your forehead despite the breeze, the contrast sharpening, rot's heavy pall versus the bright citrus from a neighbor's crate, scents clashing like the push of the crowd. A gust lifts the canopy edge, scattering wilted greens that you chase across the cobbles, knees scraping the grime as you gather them, body protesting the endless cycle of loss and lure. Unsold rot mounts behind the stall, a growing heap that promises empty pockets by dusk, while fresher wares dwindle. Buyers, fleeting attentions, a razor-edged hope. You tally the take it close, coins few and fingers soiled with the day's residue, the smells fading into evening's hush. In this olfactory war, you taste survival's bitter edge, rot and renewal intertwined, the body's labor a fragile shield against waste, where the mind clings to the fresh promise, enduring the decay's reminder that each sale buys only tomorrow's uncertain stand. The steam billows up from the scullery tub like a living fog, hot and suffocating, curling around your face as you plunge the linen shirt into the scalding water, your hands turning red and pruny from the lye that stings your cracks. You're 14, the lowest in the house's chain, starting your day in the bowels of the grand estate, where the air hangs heavy with soap suds and the faint rot of kitchen scraps. You wring the cloth with a twist of your wrists, the fibers resisting before yielding, dripping down your arms in warm rivulets that soak your sleeves to the elbow. You hoist the heavy basket onto your hip, the weight pulling at your side as you head for the back stairs, narrow flights spiraling up from the dim basement to the attics, each step a grind on stone worn smooth by countless feet. Your boots echo softly, the cold railing slick under your free hand, biting into your palm as you climb, pausing midway to catch your breath, legs burning from the endless ups and downs that map the house in muscle memory. Above, the bell rings faint for the morning tea, pulling you higher. Below, the cook's knife thuds rhythmically on the board, a steady beat you sink to without thinking. At the landing, you encounter the under-housemaid, her arms laden with trays, eyes meeting yours in a quick, weary acknowledgement. She steps aside with a slight nod, making space in the tight passage, her shoulders sagging under her own load before she vanishes up another flight. You distribute the clean linens room by room, smoothing sheets over featherbeds, in chambers where sunlight filters through lace curtains, a world of polished wood and silver that feels foreign to your calloused fingers. Tension builds in the household's rhythm. A door creaks open upstairs, the mistress's footsteps light on the carpet, her shadow fleeting as you duck into the hall. Basket lightening but body heavier from the hall. You descend again, the stairs seeming steeper now, steam waiting below to reclaim you for the next round, pots to scour, hearths to blacken. In this hidden circuit of labor, you feel the unseen pulse of service. Body folded into the house's demands, stairs blurring time into repetition, where endurance isn't chosen but woven into the bone, a quiet resistance that keeps the grandeur gleaming while the self fades into the steam's embrace. The sharp tink of the bell jars you from the thin mattress in the attic dorm, a insistent pull that yanks you upright in the pre-dawn gloom, your head brushing the slanted ceiling beams slick with condensation. No privacy here, just a row of narrow cots crammed under the eaves, the air stale with the mingled breaths of fellow servants, a faint, sour tang of unwashed wool from the piled blankets. You swing your legs down, feet hitting the cold boards that creak under your weight, toes curling against the chill that seeps up like an unwelcome guest as you fumble for your cap and apron in the dim flicker of a stump candle. You slip into the corridor, the narrow passage forcing you to sidestep a dozing housemaid curled on her pallet, her arm flopping aside as you pass, a silent apology in your quick step. Down the back stairs you go, hand trailing the icy banister, each rung a jolt to your sleep-fogged limbs, the house's demands already coiling tension in your back from yesterday's unyielding carry. The bell sounds again from the master's study, insistent, demanding, pulling you through the servants, hall where the cook stirs embers with a poker, her glance heavy-lidded and knowing, shoulders slumping as she nods you toward the tray waiting on the sideboard. You load it with china rattling softly in your grasp, the porcelain cool and fragile against your calloused palms, and ascend the main stairs now, the weight tugging at your arms while the carpet muffles your steps into hushed urgency. The master's door stands ajar, light spilling gold from the lamp, and you enter to find him at his desk, quill scratching impatiently. He waves a hand without looking up, gesturing for the tea, his foot tapping a rhythm of expectation that quickens your pulse. You pour with steady hands, steam rising to warm your face briefly, then retreat as the bell tugs elsewhere. The drawing room next, where the mistress adjusts her shawl, her eyes flicking over you with cool appraisal before pointing to a fallen cushion you stoop to retrieve, knees protesting the bend. The day unspools in summons after summons, bells chiming like chains in your ears, no moment to pause in the crush of duties, you're caught the only sliver of space that shrinks smaller with each weary return. In this web of calls, you feel the self dissolving into service's tide, weariness not just in the body, but in the mind's quiet surrender to the endless pull, where personal bounds blur into the house's vast, indifferent sprawl, breeding a resilience forged from the ache of never quite belonging to yourself. The roar engulfs you the moment the factory doors swing open, a relentless wall of clatter from the power looms that swallows every other sound, pounding against your eardrums like hammers on an anvil without pause. You're back at your station after the brief midday break, the din so thick it vibrates in your chest, making your ribs hum as you thread the shuttle through the warp, fingers moving by habit amid the flying shuttles and whirring gears. The air tastes metallic from the oil lubricating the machines, a greasy film that coats your lips with each swallow, while the floor trembles under your feet, cold iron grating against your thin-soled shoes. You lean over your loom, arms aching from the pull of resetting bobbins that spin wildly, the noise blurring into a single throbbing pulse that drowns your own breaths. Sparks of lint dance in the dim gaslight overhead, sticking to your sweat-damp skin, and you wipe your forehead with a forearm, only to feel the vibration deepen as the drive belt slaps in rhythm nearby. A girl to your left, no older than 10, gestures sharply, pointing at a jammed thread on her frame, her mouth moving in unheard pleas, eyes wide with frustration as she mimics the untangling motion, her small hands shaking from the effort. You nod back, signaling understanding despite the barrier, reaching across to free the snag with quick twists, the machine's fury masking her sigh of relief. Tension coils in the vast hall, rows of looms marching like soldiers in mechanical lockstep, the ceaseless barrage forcing workers to communicate in frantic waves and pulls. A man down the aisle taps his watch, brows furrowed in weary exaggeration, urging the shift's end that feels eternally distant. Another pauses to cup his ear, wincing at a particularly shrill whine from a loosening cog, his face paling as he signals for tools with broad sweeps. Your ears ring now, a high-pitched whine layering over the roar, numbing the world to muffled echoes, every yank on the loom sending jolts up your arms that blend with the din's assault. Hours stretch in this auditory storm, the clatter etching fatigue not just into muscles, but into hearing itself, turning clarity to cotton. In the loom's unyielding symphony, you grasp how noise steals more than silence. It erodes the self's quiet core, body and mind adapting to the barrage until resistance fades, leaving only the numb pulse of persistence amid the factory's insatiable rhythm. The shuttle whips past your knuckles with a blurred hiss, close enough that you feel its rush of air graze your skin. A fleeting brush that sends your heart slamming against your ribs before it slams into the loom's frame with a sharp crack. You're bent low over your machine in the factory's thunder, hands darting to catch the thread as it unravels, the unguarded gears spinning inches from your fingers, exposed teeth that could snag and tear without mercy. The oil-slick metal warms under your touch, vibrating with the loom's hunger, a faint, acrid scent rising from the friction that mixes with the ever-present wool dust tickling your nose. You feed the bobbin in, wrists twisting just so, every motion a calculated risk amid the hall's frenzy, where machines loom like indifferent beasts. A boy beside you flinches suddenly, yanking his hand back with a wince, his thumb caught briefly in a shuttle's path. Reddened and swelling already, he flexes it gingerly, eyes darting to the foreman who paces the aisle, then back to his work with a set jaw, shaking his head as if to dismiss the sting. Across the row, An older worker labors one-handed, his left sleeve pinned up over a stump where fingers once gripped, his good hand gesturing warning to a newcomer who hesitates too close to the flyer, pulling back with wide-eyed nods. Tension thrums in your veins like the belts overhead, each pass of the shuttle a gamble. Will it snag cloth or flesh? You lean in to repair a snag, arm brushing the iron arm that swings without guard, the near miss leaving your palm damp with fresh sweat as you pull away, breath catching. The air thickens with shared caution. A girl down the line pauses her piecing, rubbing a fresh scrape on her knuckle, her glance meeting yours in silent commiseration before she resumes, shoulders tense under her cap. Machines falter occasionally, a jam halting the whir, granting a heartbeat of relative quiet, only for the roar to resume, shuttles flying renewed, the threat ever present in the unguarded whirl. You flex your fingers between tasks, checking for bruises that bloom unbidden, the constant vigilance wearing grooves into your focus. In this gauntlet of motion, you confront the body's fragile bargain with the machine, limbs offered to the rhythm, where one slip claims parts irretrievable, forging a wary alliance between fear and necessity, the mind sharpening to evade the iron's grasp until weariness tempts the fatal lapse. The hiss of the gas mantle ignites first, a soft pop that cuts the night's chill, casting a sputtering yellow glow across the alley's slick walls, where shadows twist like fingers reaching from the murk. You're slipping down the narrow passage after the long shift, the cobbles uneven under your boots, cold seeping through to numb your heels as puddles from the day's rain reflect the flame in fractured pools. The light pools faint at your feet, illuminating the grime, rotted peels and horse droppings mashed into the stone. But beyond its reach, the darkness presses close, thick with the damp reek of overflowing gutters and distant mill smoke that clings to your coat like a shroud. You quicken your pace, breath fogging in the air, hand trailing the rough brick for guidance, the mortar flaking gritty under your palm as footsteps echo from a side lane, sharp, then halting, sending a prickle up your spine. A figure emerges into the gaslight's fringe, cloaked and hunched, eyes glinting as he pauses, hand dipping into his pocket, before veering away, with a low mutter swallowed by the fog. You press on, pulse thudding, the lamp's steady burn on the corner post your only tether in the labyrinth of backstreets. Windows above shuttered tight, but a door creaks open briefly, a woman's silhouette gesturing you forward with a quick wave, her face etched with caution before she ducks back, leaving the alley emptier. Tension coils with every turn, the light flickers on a discarded knife blade half buried in mud, casting long warnings, while rats skitter in the gloom, their claws clicking like distant threats. You glance over your shoulder, the gas mantle's warmth fading as you near the main road, its promise fragile against the night's underbelly, alleys where muggings lurk in unlit bends, cries muffled by the sprawl. The glow guides but exposes too, painting your path in wavering assurance amid the peril, the cold air nipping sharper in the unprotected stretches. You emerge finally into the broader street, the gaslights multiplying like hesitant beacons, body trembling from the ordeal. In the flicker of these man-made stars, you feel the era's double edge, light carving safety from shadow, yet underscoring the darkness it can't fully banish, where the mind clings to illumination's vow, resisting the pull of unseen dangers that test the night's unyielding grip on the vulnerable soul. The scrape of boots on cobbles behind you slices the foggy hush, a deliberate drag that sets your nerves alight as you hurry down the poorly lit lane. Heart pounding in sync with the distant factory whistle fading into night. The air tastes of coal and damp stone, cold nipping at your collar as you clutch your meager wages in a knotted handkerchief, fingers numb from the chill and the fear coiling tight in your gut. Shadows stretch long from the sporadic gas lamps, their glow pooling mockingly on the wet ground, while the stretches between plunge into inky voids where threats brew unseen, the reek of refuse from tipped bins sharpening your senses to every rustle. You quicken your step, boots splashing through shallow puddles that mirror the faint light like shattered glass, glancing back to catch a silhouette peeling from the wall. Two figures now, low-slung caps shadowing faces that advance with lazy menace, one twirling a stick idly, the other hands buried in pockets that might hide worse. Your breath quickens, shallow and fogging as you veer toward a wider street, but the alley funnels narrow, forcing you past a stack of crates where a rat bursts out, claws skittering, making you stumble into a wall that scrapes your palm raw. The men close in, footsteps echoing yours. A low chuckle swallowed by the fog. One reaches out, brushing your sleeve in a feint that sends you sidestepping, pulse thundering as you shove past a beggar hunched in a doorway, his gnarled hand waving you on with urgent flick, eyes wide in shared wariness. Tension peaks as you burst onto a crossing path edged by a flickering lamp, the footpads hanging back at the light's edge, their posture shifting to casual loiterers, but the threat lingers like the sour aftertaste in your mouth. Crime's shadow ever present in these sprawled slums, where darkness emboldens the desperate, turning every walk into a gauntlet. You press on toward the lit thoroughfare, legs trembling from the sprint, the handkerchief still safe but your mind etched with the close call. In the city's veiled underbelly, you feel fear's insidious hold, not just on the body, but threading through the thoughts, a constant vigil that sharpens instinct while dulling the soul, where resistance means navigating the gloom not as victim, but survivor, weighing each shadow against the will to reach tomorrow's uncertain dawn. The laughter bubbles up sharp and sudden from the alley's mouth, a bright peal cutting through the haze of coal dust and stale piss that hangs over the cobbled yard. You're 10, hunkered on the stoop of the crumbling tenement. The stone steps cold and crumbling under your thighs, flakes of mortar dusting your patched trousers like gray snow. Your stomach growls empty, but the sound draws you up, bare feet padding over the uneven ground, littered with broken bottles that crunch faintly, their edges glinting dull in the weak afternoon sun filtering through smog. You edge closer, joining the knot of kids your age clustered around a rusted rain barrel upended in the corner, its sides bowed, but sturdy enough for their game. One boy, soot-streaked face alight, heaves a stick like a bat, tapping a makeshift ball of rags wrapped tight with twine that arcs through the air before you lunge, hands outstretched, the rough bundle smacking into your palm with a soft thud that stings your scraped knuckles. The barrel echoes their cheers with metallic rings as they circle, feet kicking up puffs of dirt that cake your calves, the air thick with the earthy tang of damp wood and unwashed warmth from clustered bodies. You swing the ball back, watching it sail toward a girl perched on the barrel's rim, her legs dangling as she leans out with a grin, arms flailing to catch it mid-tumble. She misses, tumbling after in a heap that dissolves into giggles, her hand reaching up to pull you down beside her, fingers sticky from whatever scraps they scavenged earlier. The group reforms quick, a chase starting around the yard's perimeter, where walls lean precarious with ivy cracks, climbing over rubble piles that shift underfoot, cold bricks biting into your palms as you scramble up, heart racing not from fear, but the thrill of the climb's peak where the city sprawls below in grimy sprawl. Joy flares in these fragments, rags and ruins turned playground, the decay's grip loosened by shared motion until the distant mill whistle wails afternoon's end, scattering the group with hurried gestures, eyes lingering on the fun cut short. In this stolen interlude, you taste childhood's tenacity, body and mind seizing scraps of delight from the rubble, a resilient spark that defies the grind, reminding how even in decay's shadow, the human urge to play endures, weaving brief tapestries of light against the encroaching dusk. The shrill wail of the factory whistle pierces the air like a blade, yanking you from the ragball chase mid-throw, the bundle dropping limp into the dust at your feet. You're still breathless from the scramble, cheeks flushed under the grime, but the sound drags reality back, cold fingers gripping your shoulders as the yard's fleeting warmth evaporates. The air turns sharper with the evening chill, carrying the acrid bite of coal smoke from the stacks that blots the sky, settling on your tongue like bitter ash as you straighten, the stone step's hardness now pressing unforgiving against your heels. You glance at the others, your playmates scattering like startled birds, a boy pausing to kick the barrel upright with a frustrated shove, his eyes meeting yours in a shared flicker of protest before he shoulders his satchel and trudges toward the gate. The girl from the tumble wipes her hands on her skirt, gesturing you, along with a quick jerk of her head, her small frame stiffening as the whistle's echo fades into the rumble of approaching footsteps from the streets. You snatch up the twine ball, stuffing it into your pocket where it bulges awkward against your thigh, the joy's residue cooling fast as you fall into line, feet kicking pebbles that skitter ahead like reluctant companions. The walk to the mill feels longer now, cobbles slick with recent rain that soaks your socks, the transition from play's lightness to labor's weight sinking into your bones with each step. Other children merge into the stream, faces you know from the yard, now drawn tight, one lad rubbing his scraped knee with a wince, another adjusting his cap lower as if to shield against the inevitable. The factory looms ahead, iron gates creaking open under the foreman's watch, his lantern swinging to herd you in, the glow revealing the line of small bodies funneling through, shoulders brushing in silent resignation. Inside, the loom's hum awaits, pulling you to your station where hands that tossed the ball now thread shuttles, fingers nimble but weary from the switch. In this abrupt severance, you feel time's cruel pivot, childhood not lost in a moment, but chipped away by whistles and whistles, body yielding to the machine's call while the mind clings to play's echo, a quiet defiance that whispers of joys too brief, forging resilience from the ache of what work forever claims. The acrid bite of sulfur seeps into your nostrils first as you crack the casement window in the cramped room, the factory fumes rolling in like an uninvited fog that coats everything in a greasy haze, turning the morning light to a jaundiced yellow. You're stirring the pot over the grate, the coal fire below coughing its own black tendrils that mingle with the outdoor assault, filling your lungs with a sharp, throat-scraping tang that leaves you hacking into your sleeve, eyes watering as you wipe them on your apron. The air tastes metallic now, like licking rusted iron, clinging to the bread you break for breakfast, stale crusts made fouler by the permeation. You step out to the street, the smoke thicker here, belching from chimneys that dot the rooftops like accusatory fingers, wrapping around your legs as you navigate the throng toward the pump. Your neighbor emerges from the next door, coughing raspy into a handkerchief pressed to her mouth, her eyes red-rimmed and narrowed as she gestures at the sky with a weary wave, shoulders slumping before she turns away to shake out her linens, the cloth emerging dirtier. Children play nearby, their games pausing as a gust shifts the plume, one girl rubbing her nose with a grubby fist, while a boy pulls his collar higher, his small body tensing against the invisible weight that makes you all lean forward, breath shallow to ration the clean pockets of air. Tension builds in the daily drift. The fumes follow you to the line at the market, where sellers fan away the haze from their wares, faces pinched in silent endurance, one trader pausing to hawk and spit a glob of phlegm-tainted dark. You squeeze past a cart laden with coal sacks, the dust rising in puffs that settle on your skin like fine grit, itching under your collar as the afternoon wears, the smell deepening into your hair and clothes until you can't escape it, even in the dim evening huddle. Windows stay shut against the onslaught, trapping the residue inside, a constant companion that blurs the line between breath and blight. You settle by the hearth at dusk, the fire's smoke now a familiar torment, body heavy with the infiltration. In this suffocating veil, you sense the era's invisible tax, lungs burdened by the machines, exhalations, mind numbed by the unyielding assault, where resistance means simply inhaling the next poisoned draw, forging a stoic acceptance that the industrial breath reshapes the human one, slow and inexorable. Slow and inexorable. The weight of the air presses on your chest as you draw your first breath of the day. Thick, with the perpetual shroud of coke ovens and tannery fumes that seep through the cracked window pane, a rancid brew of tar and chemicals that coats your throat like tar paper. You're in the heart of Manchester's sprawl, rising from the shared pallet where sleep never fully claims you, the stench already woven into your dreams, turning them hazy and foul. You cough into your fist. the sound wet and rasping as you pull on your boots, the leather stiff from soot that settles like black frost on every surface, fingers blackening as you lace them. You venture out into the street, where the haze hangs low, sun a diffused orb behind the veil, the odor intensifying, sulfur from the gasworks mingling with the sharp rot of dye vats spilling into the Irk, a miasma that follows you like a shadow as you thread through the waking crowds. Women hang wash on lines that sag under the grime, their faces pinched as they pin the cloth, arms waving futilely to fan the air. A man trudges past with a cart of hides, pausing to hack deep, his hand pressing a rag to his mouth before he shoulders on, eyes watering in silent endurance. The smell clings to your clothes, your skin, invading every pore, making your eyes burn as you pass a cluster of workers lighting pipes, the tobacco smoke a feeble counterpoint swallowed by the dominant pall. By midday, the city's breath quickens, the factories belch fresher plumes, turning the air opaque and choking, your steps labored as you navigate the fog-shrouded lanes, lungs straining for a clean gulp that never comes. Tension simmers in the collective resignation. A child trailing his mother sneezes violently, rubbing his nose with a sleeve already soiled, while vendors at the corner hawk wilted greens that carry the taint, their gestures sharp and bargaining amid the haze. Home offers no respite, the fire's smoke layering atop the day's accumulation. Dinner, a bland gruel flavored by the unseen invaders, your head throbbing from the assault. You lean against the sill at dusk, gazing at the skyline, etched in perpetual twilight, body heavy with the inhalation's toll. In this atmospheric siege, you realize the stench isn't mere backdrop, it's the age's signature, reshaping breath into burden, mind adapting to the foul constancy, where resistance yields to inhalation's inevitability, the human spirit inhaling progress's poison, one labored draw at a time. The bitter chemical tang lingers on your tongue as you dip the splint into the pan of white phosphorus, the liquid gleaming like molten silver under the dim lamps of the match factory, its vapor rising in invisible wisps that curl into your nostrils and settle deep in your lungs. You're 14, stationed at the filling bench for hours that stretch into a haze, the sharp, garlicky reek of the stuff coating everything, your hands sticky and yellowed from the residue, your apron stiffening with dried flecks that flake off onto the floor like toxic snow. Each breath pulls it deeper, a subtle burn that you swallow down, masking it as just another factory quirk. You scrape the excess from the match heads, fingers trembling slightly from the cold troughs where you rinse between batches, the icy water shocking your skin numb, while the phosphorus clings warm and insidious. Your jaw aches today, a dull throb starting behind your teeth, like grinding on tin foil, and you rub it absently, noticing the pale glow under your nails in the low light. The phosphorus kiss, they call it, a sign the stuff has marked you. Across the bench, a girl your age winces as she packs the boxes, her cheeks hollowed, one hand pressing to her swollen gum where a tooth loosens. She meets your eye with a fleeting shake of her head, gesturing to her mouth before turning back, her movements slower, labored by the creeping rot. Tension builds in the room's confines, the hiss of flames from the drying racks blending with muffled coughs that punctuate the air, workers leaning over their tasks with faces pallid and drawn, one older woman pausing to spit a glob of foul-tasting saliva into a rag, her eyes hollow as she wipes her lips and resumes dipping, shoulders hunched against the inevitable. You feel it now in your own mouth, a metallic sourness that won't rinse away, the jaw's bone turning tender under the skin, a slow fire kindling from within. The vapor swirls thicker near the vents, drawing you to cough into your sleeve, the aftertaste bitter as decay, blurring your vision momentarily as dizziness sways the bench. You push on, packing the matches with hands that betray the first whitening, the horror unfolding not in screams but in quiet invasions. In this silent siege you grasp the body's unseen war, poison seeping like a thief in the night, eroding bone and breath with patient malice, where the mind recoils from the glow's false allure. Resistance, a fragile hold against the chemical tide that claims youth one tainted dip at a time. Your small hands tremble as you dip the matchstick into the phosphorus bath, the fumes rising in a shimmering haze that stings your eyes like needles pricking soft flesh, blurring the wooden bench into a watery smear. You're 12, one of the girls crowded at the long table in the matchworks, dim undercroft, the air thick with the garlicky reek that clings to your hair and skin, a constant cloying invasion that makes each breath a shallow sip to avoid the deeper burn. The liquid cools slick on your fingertips, numb and tingling as you shake off the excess, the tiny heads glowing faintly in the low light, mocking the darkness that presses at the room's edges. You line them up on the tray, joints aching from the repetition, the cold metal edge biting into your palms while the vapors swirl higher, coating your throat with a sour film that you swallow against, tasting like spoiled milk laced with metal. The girl next to you, younger and frailer, pauses to rub her watering eyes with the back of her hand, leaving yellowish streaks on her sleeve. She glances your way, her free hand gesturing subtly to her chest where she thumps lightly, mimicking a cough she stifles quick, her small shoulders hunching as she resumes dipping, movements jerky with the effort to hide the rattle building inside. Across the table, another shifts uneasily on her stool, legs dangling short of the floor, one foot tapping nervously as she packs the boxes, her fingers fumbling a stick that rolls off, her face paling further in the gloom before she reaches down, stifling a wince from the strain. Tension hums in the shared silence, broken only by the soft clink of trays and the occasional stifled hack, girls leaning into their tasks with faces drawn tight, eyes darting to the overseer at the far end who paces slow, his lantern swinging shadows that make the fumes dance like ghosts. Your head throbs now, a dull pulse syncing with the dip and shake, the toxic veil thickening as the shift drags, skin itching under the apron where sweat mixes with the residue, turning every motion into a reminder of the creeping toll. You pack the last row, hands steadier by force of will, but the ache settles deeper, unspoken among you all. You file out at the whistle, body heavy with the day's infiltration, the suffering woven into quiet endurance. In this veiled torment, you feel innocence's quiet erosion, tiny frames bent to the fumes, will, mind retreating from the body's betrayal, where resistance simmers in the silence, a fragile thread holding against the poison's patient unraveling of young lives. The deep toll of the church bell vibrates through the fog-shrouded street, a low resonance that calls you from the mill's clamor, pulling your weary feet toward the stone steps where the doors stand ajar in quiet invitation. You're slipping inside after the long shift, the chill air of the nave wrapping around you like a worn shawl, cool and still against your sweat-damp skin, carrying the faint, musty scent of aged wood and beeswax from the altar candles. Your boots echo softly on the flagstones, the sound swallowed by the vast, shadowed space, a balm after the factory's unending din, as you choose a pew near the back, sliding onto the hard bench that presses firm into your thighs. You kneel slowly, joints protesting the bend, palms folding on the rail worn smooth by countless hands before yours, the wood's grain rough under your calluses. The bell rings on, each peal settling deeper, sinking with your slowing breaths, the light filtering through stained glass windows in muted reds and blues that dance faint patterns on the floor. Around you, a handful of others gather. A woman ahead crosses herself with deliberate motion, her head bowed low, shoulders easing as she lingers. An old man in the side aisle grips his hat, eyes lifting to the crucifix with a nod of quiet surrender, his posture straightening just a fraction. No rush here, no overseer's bark, just the shared hush, broken only by the soft creak of wood and the distant drip from a leaky roof. You close your eyes, the silence amplifying the ache in your back, the raw pull of muscles from the day's haul. But in this pause, tension uncoils slightly, the bell's final ring fading into a hush that allows thoughts to surface unhurried, memories of simpler days flickering like the candle flames. A child slips in beside you, small hand brushing your sleeve in accidental touch, her gaze fixed forward in solemn mimicry, offering a fleeting warmth before she shifts away. The air grows heavier with incense as a lone figure approaches the altar, the scent rising clean and grounding, a rare anchor in the grind. You rise eventually, legs stiff but steadied, the solace lingering like a held breath as you step back into the evening's chill. In this sacred interlude, you touch something enduring. Body granted truce from labor's siege, mind finding harbor in the quiet ring, where faith's whisper offers resistance, not in rebellion, but in the gentle persistence of soul against the world's relentless weight. The threadbare wool of your shawl scratches against your neck as you settle back into the pew, the fabric mended so often it's thin as paper, holding the chill of the stone church against your skin like an old friend's grip. Around you, the congregation gathers slow, faces weathered but lifted in quiet resolve, the faint scent of damp earth and lanolin rising from coats patched with mismatched scraps, mingling with the lingering beeswax from the candles. Your hands, rough from the loom, fold into your lap, fingers tracing a loose seam as the organ wheezes to life, its notes low and steady, vibrating through the wood to ease the knot in your back from the day's hunch. You glance sidelong at the woman beside you, her dress faded to gray but smoothed straight with care, her head tilting toward yours in a subtle nod of recognition, her eyes deep-set and kind, holding the shared weight of factory shifts and hungry evenings. A man across the aisle adjusts his cap on his knee, his sleeves rolled to show forearms scarred by machinery, and he reaches to steady a young lad slipping in late, his large hand gentle on the boy's shoulder, guiding him to sit with a firm pat that speaks of fatherly endurance beyond blood. The group swells, bodies close in the narrow space, elbows brushing accidental but warm, a rhythm building in the shifting postures, heads bowing in unison, hands clasping briefly in quiet solidarity, the air thickening with this unspoken bond that stitches the ragged edges of life together. Tension from the world outside fades here, replaced by the slow sway of hymn singing, voices rough but harmonious, rising like smoke from the grates, your own joining soft at first, gaining strength from the chorus. A girl in the row ahead turns slightly, offering a worn handkerchief to dab at your forehead sweat, her gesture quick, and returned with a grateful touch to her arm, the community weaving its web of small acts that hold against the crush. The service moves deliberate, prayers murmured in waves, faces etched with lines of toil yet composed in dignity, the worn clothes, a uniform of quiet defiance. As the final blessing falls, you rise with the others, the shawl slipping but caught by the woman beside you, her smile faint but anchoring. In this gathering of the frayed, you feel strength's subtle forge, bodies clad in hardship finding posture in union, mind drawing fortitude from the collective gaze, where dignity blooms not from finery, but from the resilient thread binding souls against the era's unyielding storm. The haze of pipe smoke curls thick around the low beams of the pub's back room, its bitter, woody tang mixing with the sour spill of ale that soaks the scarred tables, clinging to your fingers as you grip the tankard. You're slipping in late from the shift, the doors creak muffled by the low rumble of voices huddled in the corner booth, where lamplight flickers shadows across faces etched with the day's grind. The wooden bench bites cold through your trousers, rough splinters pricking as you squeeze in beside the weaver from down the lane, his broad shoulders tense, knuckles whitening around his mug. You lean in, ears straining over the distant clink of glasses in the main bar, catching fragments, heads nodding sharp, hands chopping air in restrained fury, a man's fist thumping the table soft but insistent, his eyes burning with the fire of unspoken grievances. The air grows heavier with each gesture, the group's circle tightening like a noose. A woman across from you tracing patterns in the wet rings on the wood, her lips moving in urgent hush, brow furrowed as she glances at the door, then back, her free hand clenching into a fist before releasing. Tension coils in the dim confines, the anger palpable in stolen looks. A lad your age shifts closer, his thin arm brushing yours, gesturing with quick jabs toward an invisible overseer, face flushing red under the grime while an older worker nods slow, his calloused palm pressing flat to steady the rising swell. The murmurs build rhythmically, hands passing a crumpled broadsheet that rustles like dry leaves, fingers pointing to smudged words that fuel the nods and scowls, the pub's warmth turning stifling with the heat of shared resolve. You add your own subtle tap on the table, syncing with the pulse, the ale's bitter dregs warming your throat, but doing little to quench the inner churn. The meeting drags, shadows lengthening as the lamp gutters, the whispers weaving a web of dissent that binds the weary forms together, faces alight with a dangerous spark. You file out into the night eventually, the cool air a slap after the close press, body humming with the charged hush. In these shadowed huddles, you sense anger's slow forge, minds kindling from whispers, the body's fatigue transmuted to fuel, where community breeds not just solace, but the quiet blaze of resistance, a collective breath held against the machine's unyielding demand. The dim flicker of the lantern casts wavering pools on the pub's worn table as you huddle closer to the circle, the shared warmth of bodies pressing in against the creeping draft from the cracks in the door, a faint chill seeping through your threadbare coat to prickle your arms. The ale's yeasty bite lingers on your tongue from the past mug, grounding you as hands unfold across the scarred wood, palm to palm in tentative clasp, the calluses rough and familiar, a silent pact forming in the grip that holds longer than comfort alone. You're part of this now, the weaver's fingers tightening around yours, his eyes locking with a nod that conveys the weight of lost wages and aching backs, the group's rhythm shifting from murmur to measured resolve. You feel the burden lift slightly in the shared press, elbows brushing as shoulders roll back, the woman across from you leaning forward, her hand covering a scarred knuckle with a gentle press, her gaze sweeping the faces with quiet fire that mirrors the spark igniting in your chest. Tension eases into purpose. A man traces a line on the broadsheet with his thumb, head tilting in emphasis, drawing nods that ripple through the group like a current, bodies straightening one by one, the collective exhale carrying not defeat, but the breath of something stirring. The lad beside you shifts, his young fist clenching then opening in mimicry, eyes widening with a dawning light of possibility, his free hand gesturing outward as if mapping the first steps beyond these walls. The meeting stretches, hands lingering in connection, the air thickening with the subtle shift from despair's hold to hope's fragile flame, faces alight with the unspoken vow to carry the load together. You withdraw slowly as the circle breaks, the clasp's echo warming your palm, steps lighter on the cobblestones outside, despite the night's cold bite. In this forging of wills, you touch the human core, bodies bearing the era's yoke, minds kindling change from shared strain, where the spark of action blooms not in isolation, but in the unbreakable weave of hands clasped against the dark, whispering of a dawn wrested from endurance's quiet fire. The dawn mist clings to your skin like a damp veil as you trudge the rutted lane out of town, the first light piercing the factory haze in pale shafts that do little to warm the chill seeping through your threadbare coat. Your boots crunch over frost-kissed gravel, each step a reminder of miles walked in darkness. Blistered soles from mill floors, numb toes from mine shafts, the ache of hands warped by looms. The air carries the fading reek of last night's coal fires, acrid and lingering, mixing with the fresh earth upturned by early carts rumbling past, their drivers hunched forward in shadowed caps, offering a distant nod that speaks of shared miles. You pause at a crossroads, breath fogging in the cold, fingers flexing against the memory of raw palms gripping picks, dipping into phosphorus, threading endless shuttles. The body's toll etched in scars and stoops you see now in the mirror of passing faces. A cluster of workers overtakes you, their gait heavy but steady. One man clapping your shoulder with a firm grip, his eyes holding the weight of lost kin and broken backs. A woman beside him adjusts her shawl, her glance steady and kindred, as if measuring the road's length and the lines around your eyes. They press on without pause, the group's rhythm pulling you forward, footsteps sinking in unspoken cadence, the horizon's glow a faint promise against the receding spires of iron and brick that loom like sentinels of sacrifice. The path winds gradual, past derelict sheds where childhood games once echoed faint, now silenced by whistles that called hands to labor before dawn. Tension from those years lingers, a knot in your chest from overcrowding's crush, the fever's chill, the fumes' bitter bite. But here, in the open stretch, it loosens, the slow ascent mirroring the era's crawl from shadows. Birds stir in the hedgerows, their calls sharp against the quiet, a contrast to the roar you left behind. You crest a rise finally, the valley unfolding below in smudged gray, body weary but unbowed, mind tracing the sacrifices. Map. In this measured march, you ponder progress's debt, bodies bent to forge the new world, minds enduring the dark to glimpse light, where resistance isn't thunderous revolt but the persistent step forward, one scarred foot after another, toward a horizon won from the unyielding night. The embers glow soft in the grate as you settle by the hearth in the quiet room, the faint crackle of wood settling filling the hush after the day's clamor, warmth seeping gradually through your woolen socks to thaw the perpetual chill in your bones. You're alone now, the family retired to thin pallets, but the fire's light dances on the walls like memories flickering back. Scars on your hands from shuttles and picks catching the orange hue, a map of endurance etched in skin and sinew. You lean forward, poking the coals with an iron rod that burns your palm slightly through the cloth wrap, stirring the flames higher, the scent of charred oak rising clean against the ever-present coal dust that powders the sill outside. You trace the lines on your knuckles, feeling the pull of old injuries, the way flesh has toughened around breaks from falls in shafts or snags in looms, each mark a testament to mornings dragged from bed before light, evenings collapsing into sleep without supper. A neighbor raps lightly at the door, entering with a shared loaf wrapped in cloth, her hands, gnarled like yours, pressing it into your grasp with a firm squeeze, eyes meeting in the firelight with a nod that carries the weight of mutual survival, her departure leaving the room warmer for the exchange. The bread crumbles soft under your teeth, its plain yeasty, taste a small victory over hunger's edge, fueling the quiet resolve that simmers like the embers. The night deepens, flames steadying to a low pulse, illuminating faded sketches on the wall, children's drawings of open fields that never were, now yellowed but held dear. Tension from the years, grind lingers in your frame, the ache of crowded tenements and fevered nights, but here in the glow, it yields to something forged deeper, the spirit's unyielding bend, refusing to snap under the iron weight. You rise slowly, joints protesting but compliant, extinguishing the light with a careful snuff, the darkness settling gentle rather than oppressive. In this hearthside vigil you sense the fire's true lesson, resilience not in grand flames, but in the enduring coal that withstands the blaze, bodies and minds tempered by trial to carry forward the unbowed will, a legacy of quiet strength that outlasts the machine's roar, whispering that the human spark, though tested, never fully dims.